everybody, Bruce here. Today we are going to winterize the boat. It is a 2010 Malibu 23 LSV. So what we're going to show you here is probably relevant to your boat if you have a similar vintage and style wakeboard boat. Follow along and hopefully this will give you enough confidence and know how to do it yourself next year. So this is something you can do yourself, save yourself some money. Takes a little bit of time, but there's nothing terribly complicated. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Thank you. What we are going to do when we winterize the boat is a couple things. On the fiberglass gel coat, we want to get it cleaned up. Even though we clean it every time we take it out of the water, you can get a scum line, some buildup from the lake. We'll start with an acid clean. Please be very careful when you do this. If you use the muriatic acid, wear eye protection, wear some old clothes because it'll destroy them if you get any of it on your clothes. Protect your skin, just be very careful. So the acid's very strong, but it does a fantastic job of cleaning up the hull. You'll like the results. Second of all, we want to make sure that in case of freezing, nothing's going to happen to the motor. So we are going to put some RV antifreeze, run that through, take care of that, get rid of most of that water when we're done. One of the optional things to do is change the fluid in the transmission. Did that last year, so I'll show you how to do that, but I won't actually do it this year. We'll do an oil change. The other thing you're going to want to do is clean the upholstery real well. So hopefully when you put it away for the season, when you get it out next year, you'll be ready to go and nothing will happen. So hope you enjoy the video. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you have any questions, and looking forward to your comments and feedback. All right, so I wanted to show you a quick view of what we're going to need just to get started. I'm going to need some other wrench sizes and miscellaneous stuff along the way, but the basics. So we got 3 gallons of RV antifreeze, about $5 a gallon. Get the RV antifreeze, it's much cheaper than the other stuff. In addition to that, we have a hose to hook up to the water intake to keep the water flowing in to control the temperature of the motor. 8mm socket to take care of the hose clamps. We have manufacturer recommended 15W40 motor oil, a couple gallons of that, oil filter, funnel, fogging oil. I've already filled up the boat all the way up to the top and put 22 ounces of fuel stabilizer in there, and then we have the oil pump with the hose attachment to make sure we can get in there and drain the oil, and our handy dandy oil filter wrench. So let's get started. Have the motor opened up, and the first thing we are going to do is disconnect the intake, the water intake. That is the black hose with the green stripe on it. That is pulling water from the lake. We need to have water circulating through the motor as we bring it up to temperature. And so we're going to replace that with a little hose I've got. Put the hose in there. That'll allow us to start the motor, get the oil temperature up so it drains easily, and then we'll get on to the oil change. So here we are with the garden hose going in through the inlet. The engine ran for about 5 to 10 minutes and is up to temperature. We've got the water disconnected, and as you can see, we have the oil pump connected to one of the batteries, and it's 8-10 foot cord, which is awesome. We have the dipstick removed and the suction tube from the oil pump all the way down as far as it'll go to the bottom of the block. That will suck all of the oil out in about 5 minutes. So while that's going, we'll continue to get the other stuff ready to change the oil filter and continue on with the winterization. With the engine up to temperature, it takes about 10 minutes to suck all of the oil out of the motor, and now it's time to move on to the filter. You can see that I've got here a Fram PH30. Pick your poison. Anything that's the same size will work. The other thing I wanted to show you, we have a little better view here now that we've got the partition taken out. That is alternatively the hose that you can snake through the rear drain, the rear main drain plug, unscrew that tip and drain the oil that way. So if you don't have a sucker, that's an option, but I can tell you that it's much easier to do the sucker. This boat calls for 5.5 quarts of 15W40, which is heavy duty diesel. We're going to end up putting a half quart in here now. Then we'll top it up with another quart in just a second so we get the accurate measurement, and then put the whole other gallon in, and we'll be all set to check the oil pressure in just a second. This is a kind of handy funnel for measuring. The other one I have does not fit down into the top here easily without spilling it. So this takes a little bit longer. It actually in the end is much easier, however. Okay, we're back. So the oil change is done, complete. Started the motor back up, checked the oil pressure, we're good there. We've started the motor again, bring the motor back up in temperature, open up the thermostat, so when we put the antifreeze in, it'll go into through the entire water path. So let's give that a shot. And here we go. So we are here in Ohio, and it is October 21st on Saturday. Yesterday it was 80 degrees, today it's going to be 74 degrees. Certainly in Indian summer, it kind of kills me to have to winterize today rather than taking it out on the water, but you know, we had a wonderful season, got lucky with the weather, and almost all good things must come to an end. And if I look outside the boat, I can see that the antifreeze is starting to come out, so it's flushing through. We'll shut the boat off. There are a couple other things I want to point out. As I mentioned, kind of a belt and suspenders approach. If you're going to use the antifreeze, that's probably okay, but you might want to drain all the water from the water path also. So what I'd like to do is show you a couple of those drain points and a couple other things to consider while you're winterizing your boat. Just keep in mind the motor is hot, so the exhaust is really hot, it'll burn you. So we'll take our time when we do this to make sure that we don't get burned by hot water or a hot motor. As you can see, we have the main intake hose reconnected and the worm clamp all tightened up. We're done here. Now we'll move on to the rest of the water path. I don't know if you can see, there's a little blue label that says 2 heater. If you follow that down, that goes to the boat heater up front, and there's also a return line that comes in between the main manifold here. So that takes water up to the heater, which is an awesome feature on the boat. But one thing you're going to want to do is flush that. So I'm going to disconnect both of those in just a second, blow into one of them, empty that water channel, and then we'll move on and disconnect a couple of the other hoses. And so the lowest drain on the motor, let me see, oh, there we go. So if you can see that wire, the quick connect down there, the tan thing, that is your knock sensor. So quick connect, disconnect that, pull the nut off the outside, and then the block drain is the other thing that is attached to. You need a large socket. I can't remember if it's 1 inch or 1 1/4 inches. If you pull that off, that is the lowest part of the motor. That will drain the block. So that's one you're going to want to make sure you get to if you are not going to flush antifreeze. And even if you do and you want to drain the block for the winter, that's not a bad idea. That's how you would access that drain point. So. Darn, that's hot. Woohoo! Well, I mentioned the automatic transmission fluid. I do that every other year, not every year. So I did that last year, and this is where you do that. Automatic transmission right here. There's a dipstick on the front side of the transmission and a fill only. So I can't remember how many quarts of fluid you put in, but the same thing applies. To get the sucker bucket, it's a godsend. It's a little over $100, I think, maybe less than $100, maybe more. It'll save you a lot of time when you start changing fluids on your boat. So drain the fluid, fill it up with new stuff, and you're off to the races. In terms of the impeller, so your impeller is your water pump. That's what's pulling the water out of the lake or ocean, running it through your motor, just like your radiator and water system would do on your car. What's making that work is your impeller. So it's a little, in fact, I can show you what that is here in just a second. So this is what your impeller looks like. It's a piece of rubber with a brass core and a gasket. So when this thing gets frayed, if you pull up a stick or something happens on the intake, it'll mess this up, and your water temperature will go way up. There's something wrong with your impeller. So one thing that I suggest is you replace it every year. There's some lubricant you can put on to help it come in and out. I'll show you where that's located. It's not too difficult to change on the water, so well, it probably is a better idea to do it in the off season to make sure if I have an issue I can change it on the water. But this is something you may want to do when you winterize your boat. Change your impeller. Again, you just keep an extra one on your boat and know how to change it. That's an easy way to take care of that also. So we'll show you where that is right now. On the back side of your motor, if you can see down in there where that label is, that is your water pump. On the back side of that, there are 4 screws, and you pull the impeller out towards the back of the boat, slide the new one in, put a new gasket, and then put a cover. Let me see if we can get a little better view of that. So that is your water pump. So pull off that cap, pull the gasket, to get rid of the gasket, put a new one on, pull the impeller out of the back, and you'll be good to go. So we're almost done here, folks. Last thing we're going to do with the motor is we're going to fog each one of the cylinders. So using our spark plug wrench, pull each plug out, squirt some fogging oil inside the cylinder, put the spark plug back in, reattach the wires, and then we'll move on. Well, that about does it to winterize the 2010 Malibu 23 LSV. So quick recap, did a hull clean with muriatic acid and water, wiped that down, did a wax to make sure next season we can clean it off very easily, much easier if you wax it before you put it away for the season. Did a quick oil change, hopefully that all made sense. Hooked up the auxiliary hose to flow the water through while we warmed up the motor. Put some 3 gallons of RV antifreeze in the block, put everything back together, disconnected the water lines, including the heater lines, got rid of as much water as we could for the season, and last but not least, fogged each of the cylinders by pulling the spark plugs out. One last thing we want to make sure we do before we put it away for the season is the exhaust at the back of the boat. Just take some tape and tape those closed so you don't get any rodents that come in over the winter and make a nest in there. But other than that, hopefully it was pretty straightforward. Like, comment, subscribe, and appreciate you watching today. Thank you.